Hello and welcome to Tywyn in mid Wales, and if you stick around I'll tell you why there's a link between this town, the American Civil War, the best ice cream in the world, and a very old church. But first, let's do our mid Wales tick list. 1. Does it have a castle? No, there's no castle. 2. Does it have a beach? Yes, there's a beach. 3. Does it have lots of hotels where you can stay? Yes, there are lots of hotels in this area of the coast. And 4. Does it have a little railway? Yes, it does have a railway, yes. Now, the connection with the American Civil War, for that we need to turn to the Talyllyn Railway. And most of the information I'm giving you for this comes from the excellent guidebook which can be purchased from most of the stations at the railway for less than £5 and is excellent value for money and a very good read. You see, the cotton mill owning giants of Lancashire, whose businesses were suffering as a result of the American Civil War, had reached the point where they needed to consider speculating rather than holding on to their cash, because the American Civil War was squeezing their supplies. The McConnell family, one of the largest owners of cotton mills in Manchester, were the leading lights in this consortium, and they had been smarter than most of the others in that they had been storing large quantities of cotton ever since the likelihood of the Civil War breaking out became known, but even these stocks were dwindling. So it was that the industrial Midlands was in desperate need of slates for rooftops, and slate was in bountiful supply for waiting excavation in Wales. The problem was that it was in mountainous areas in North Wales, and there was a seam running pretty well from halfway between Nant Gwernel on the Talyllyn Railway, the end station now, and Corris. Quarrying had been begun there in 1847, and the owner at the time, John Pugh, chose to dispatch his slates to a transshipment wharf on the banks of the River Dovey, as had many other quarry owners along that valley. However, pack ponies had their limits, and when a group led by the McConnell family that I mentioned earlier bought the quarry from him in 1863, the method of shipment was high on their list of priorities. The McConnells had a bit of a problem. They had to get the slate from their newly acquired quarry down to the coast. The answer was a narrow gauge railway. So they called in the most famous family for designing and constructing and engineering narrow gauge railways. So they sought out James Swinton Spooner. Now, the family Spooner were well known because they pretty well kicked off the North Wales narrow gauge industry by engineering the Festiniog Railway to the north. Now, the Festiniog Railway and most of the other narrow gauge railways were gravity fed, with pack horses carrying or pulling the empty wagons back up the line. Where the Talyllyn Railway differed was that from the outset it was intended to be powered by steam locomotives. To this end, 2 locomotives were ordered from Fletcher Jennings and Company, number 1 Talyllyn and number 2 Dolgoch. Dolgoch was named after the falls on the railway, And Talyllyn was named after the lake beyond the reach of the railway, which the railway was heading towards. Number 1 Talyllyn behind me arrived in 1865, early enough to be involved in the construction of the line. Spooner surveyed the route and the necessary parliamentary powers were obtained. By 1865 the first trains ran. The Talyllyn Railway ran from a ravine near the village of Abergynolwyn down the Farthew Valley and terminated at Tywyn, at a wharf alongside the Aberystwyth and Welsh Coast Railway. There the slates could be shipped to Aberdyfi and beyond. The adopted gauge was 2 foot 3 inches, which was deliberately chosen to be identical to that of the gravity-fed Corris line, which ran down the neighbouring valley to Machynlleth. Now, the idea of making it 2 foot 3 inch gauge was that they listed the possibility that at some point in the future a line would be run from Tywyn Wharf to Aberdyfi and beyond to meet up with the Corris Railway, but this was scuppered by the Aberystwyth and Welsh Coast Railway, who objected. So that was knocked on the head, and what could have been a really, really big railway was scuppered. Anyway, moving back to our story. By 1911, the boom in the slate industry had already passed, so the McConnell family sold the entire enterprise to Sir Henry Haydon Jones, Liberal MP for Merioneth, the constituency within which the railway resides. Now, his reason for buying the railway was that he had tried desperately to find an alternative buyer, and unfortunately had failed to do so. So in order to save local jobs at the quarry and on the line, he bought them and continued for as long as he could to keep both enterprises running. One final twist in the tale comes with the sad passing of Sir Henry Haydon Jones. A preservation society created by a group of enthusiasts led by author Tom Rolt set up to save the railway and made an arrangement with Sir Haydon's widow to purchase the land and the line and run it as a preserved railway. So in July 1950, after the passing of Sir Haydon, the deal was done over several months, and in 1951 the Talyllyn Railway Preservation Society was born. The world's first, and another first for Tywyn. This is Holgate's Ice Cream, just outside Tywyn, on a little industrial estate. And what makes these special is that they infuse this ice cream with honey, which enhances all the flavours, but even this basic flavour is absolutely fantastic. I've travelled the world and I've tried ice cream all over the world, but this is the best in the world. And if you don't believe me, come and try some and tell me I'm wrong. And if you visit Tywyn without trying the Holgate ice cream, you really are missing a trick. I promised you a really old church, didn't I? Well, the current church is Victorian, but that isn't the really old one that I was referring to. And if you go to the old assembly rooms, which is now the town cinema, and go and see a film whilst you're there, because it's helps the town, and it's also a nice way to spend a rainy day whilst you're there. But anyway, outside there is a signpost which tells you the history of the old town, and there you will find details of St Cadfan's Church, which is the original church that was built on the site of the current Victorian church. So the first settlement formed around a church founded by the Breton monk Cadfan in the 6th century, 200 years after the Romans had left Britain. Water came from a nearby spring and soon became famous for miraculous cures. Strange that. This church became one of the major religious establishments in North Wales, a class or college sending missionaries further north. Talyllyn Fard I, a 12th century poet, describes a much visited whitewashed church by the shore of the Blue Sea. Today's largely Victorian church contains the Cadfan stone, the first example of written Welsh, and Bradshaw, made famous by Michael Portillo in his television series, writing in his railway handbook in 1863, said St Cadfan's will delight the antiquarian, and so it does today.